Good evening and welcome. So excited to join all of you tonight for this crucial talk. So excited. Call your friends, tell them to join, tell them to log in, and let's have a great night together. So tonight we're going to be discussing some crucial topics related to healthy living. The heart of your health really are the personal choices that you make. And underlying those personal choices, as we're going to talk about tonight, are your emotions. So emotions and eating, that's the topic tonight, the science of emotions and eating. If you have any questions along the way or comments, please feel free to post them here with the Zoom app, and we'll try to get to some of them at the end of tonight's conversation. So let's talk. Many of you may not know me, but my past is a unique one. I grew up at a place called Esser's Health Ranch. There, my grandfather for 65 years ran this place where 30 people at a time or so could stay on 10 acres of land and reverse disease. He ran it from the 1940s till around 2000, and I really grew up on his shoulders, experiencing what it was like to see people get healthy. And it was that experience prior to going to medical school and residency and fellowship that inspires me tonight to share this topic with you. You know, he worked so hard and so diligently over decades to share basic concepts with people, that the personal choices they make, things about nutrition and physical activity, sleep, sunshine, the emotions we carry, and of course, clean air and water are radical predictors of their health. Now, a lot of people are beginning to accept the fact that the more plants we eat, the more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains we consume, the healthier in large part our bodies can be. All the primary international and national health organizations like the CDC, the NIH, the American Heart Association say the same thing. Eat more fruits and vegetables. It's good for you. But very few people are talking about emotions. And that is tonight where I want to go. You see, like I said, we've accepted that eating more plants and exercising is health promoting, but not enough of us are thinking about the thoughts we think, the feelings we carry, and how they influence our health. Now, despite the knowledge that healthy living, eating more fruits and vegetables and exercise are good, the stats don't really back up that that's happening in our lives. In America, fewer than 8% of total calories are coming from fruits and vegetables, while 50% of calories are coming from added fat, oil, and processed flour. So although we have this knowledge, unfortunately, all too often it's not being implemented in our lives. We see this in how the health is playing out in America. A great example, in America today, 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. And it's crazy to think, but according to the New England Journal of Medicine, just published last year, they predict that by 2030, 50% of all Americans will be obese. In fact, severe obesity is likely to become the most common body mass index in women, in non-Hispanic Black adults, and in low-income adults. Here you see this picture, and it shows how radically we've changed over time, year after year, decade after decade. But this is not a lifetime. The top yellow is just 1990, and how radically we've shifted our belly sizes, our obesity that we're carrying. And this just continues over time to march forward. This is problematic, of course, because the diseases related to that extra weight, like high blood pressure, now 1 in 3 adults have high blood pressure. When we look at high cholesterol, 1 in 6 adults have high cholesterol. And when we look at diabetes, one of the most common endocrine problems, 1 in 9 adults has type 2 diabetes. So we have more information than ever that plants are good, movement is good, and yet we actually have one of the most sick societies in the history of Earth. That always made me pause, and go, well, wait, we have all this information. People know this is the truth. They know they need to eat better and exercise more. Why are we still so sick? Or as the phrase goes, why are we fat, sick, and nearly dead? Because that's what's happening for so many of the people we love and for ourselves. And what we see is there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between knowledge and action. When I first started in medicine, I thought that it was all about knowledge. If you knew what was the right thing to do, you would do it. But when we really look at behavioral change, what we notice is the following. This is a behavioral change pyramid. And if you look at this, you'll notice that knowing the benefits and the information is only one of the blocks in your success. There's so much more. Look at them. Commitment, confidence, rewards, problem solving, your self-image, your personal values. All of these radically predict how successful you will be when it comes to lifestyle change. These missing links are some of the things we want to talk about tonight. You know, the basic question we should all ask ourselves is, why do we do what we do? I ask myself that every day. Why do I do what I do? Why did I do that? To try to figure out, can I change the behavior? And why did it happen in the first place? We want to understand something. The first thing is the following. You and I are at conflict. That's important for you to know. We are. Deep inside of ourselves, we are at conflict because we're meant to eat, and yet certain foods are not food. They're not meant for our consumption. In addition, what we believe, feel, and experience is actually our reality. That's why it's so crucial to begin to think about and understand the emotions we carry and how they influence us. As a little fun thing, I want you to walk through this little exercise with me. So you see different words on the screen in different colors. Now I want you to say the color that you see of the word in front of you, and let's do it together. Ready? So we're going to go red, purple, orange, green, black. Go faster. Yellow, orange, green, blue, red, blue. You see it gets a little harder the further and the faster you go. Because one side of your brain is trying to say, no, I see the word purple, I want to say purple. And the other side of your brain is saying, I want to say red. So there's the right side of your brain that sees and visualizes and experiences the color of the word, while the left side of your brain sees the letters and how they sound. So there's a little bit of a war going on within you. The left side of the brain is all about logic and sequencing and executive function. And the right side of the brain is all about feelings and emotion and creativity and imagination. Each of us is slightly different with a balance. Some are more left brain, some are more right brain, and some are right in between. So for example, if I pull up this picture, which part of your brain responds first? Is it the left side of your brain that says, not going to touch those because I want to be healthy, and I know that's garbage, toxic, and it'll make me fat, sick, and nearly dead? Or is it the right side of your brain that's saying, woo, look at those sprinkles, baby, I want some of those, right? Which one is it? Maybe it's your left side of your brain says no, but the right side of the brain says, well, you come on, just a little bit. Or the right side of your brain says, well, if you eat that for the next 3 days, we can have 2 of those, right? And you negotiate. And before you know it, you have 2 of these, and then you're stuck. Are you going to live up to what the left side of your brain agreed to? Or are you going to break that commitment in the next meal? So we're back, that left brain and that right brain. You and I need to know ourselves and know how we function best. Is it more left brain? Is it more right brain? Because at the heart of it, what we're looking for is a balance between energy intake and expenditure. And the reward system that drives this, that influences it, is dopamine. That feel-good hormone, right? Because we need to survive. And we also, though, need to not consume so much that we get so sick we cannot survive. So there's this balance that's going on constantly. At the forefront of that balance are these reasons. I want you to quickly stop for a moment. What's your number one reason to eat? Ready? What is it? What is it? So I would hope that all of you, but now having given this talk before, I know probably not all of you, are saying survival. That's my number one reason to eat. But the reality is that should be our number one reason for eat. In fact, that is the number one reason the overwhelming majority of all creatures on Earth eat. They eat to survive. They eat for energy. Next, we should eat for nutrition, and then disease prevention and reversal. But all too often, we eat purely for pleasure. We eat for social engagement or cultural norms or emotions, whether it be because we are happy or sad or anxious or fearful. Many of us also just eat because of boredom, and some were unsure, right? We hit that, I don't know, it's 12 o'clock. I think that's what I'm supposed to eat, right? 12 noon, right? That's what most people eat. But are you really hungry? That's the question. Because while our feelings about food have not evolved, food itself has evolved. And a big part of that evolution has been the processing aspect. We've learned how to process food in amazing ways. And what's fascinating is the more we process it, the more addictive it becomes for us. So for example, take those potatoes at the bottom. You know, you can eat some potatoes, bake them, eat them. They're not that addictive. But if you slice them up and grill them with some oil, they get a little more addictive. And if you slice them up and fry them in oil, they get even more addictive. What about that little cocoa leaf at the top? You know, you might get a little buzz, a little relaxation if you suck on it like people do in the Amazon. But wow, if you process it into powder or into street cocaine, people will kill each other, destroy their lives, and mutilate themselves for that. The same, of course, with the poppies, right? And then we see it turn into opium and narcotics. The same with wheat as it's processed into white flour. People will destroy themselves for that. So addiction is driven in food by processing. As the statement goes, once you pop, you can't stop. How true it is. Yet no one's ever said that about, a Yukon baked potato with nothing on it, right? They didn't go, I ate one and couldn't stop, ate five. Now, if you had lots of sour cream and bacon and cheese dripping on it, that's a whole nother story, because now you made it an addictive food-like bomb of dopamine. Here's a fun little story or a little study for you to think about, right? This is in mice or rats, in which they had them press a lever and they'd either get cocaine or sugar, saccharin. And what they found was that if they were only allowed cocaine, they would get it all the time. If they were only allowed saccharin, they'd get it. But if they were allowed either one, they would actually choose the sugar exclusively over the cocaine. So don't kid yourself and go, well, Dr. Esser, I don't do crack cocaine, but really? Or are you sucking the powdered sugar off of all kinds of donuts and delights every day, and that's your addiction? Because there's something called hyper-palatable foods I want to introduce to you. It's a concept here. These are food-like substances of addiction. In particular, they usually have a base, and that base is either sugar, salt, or fat, or all of the above. Often it's multi-sensory, meaning it's cold, it's hot, it's crunchy, it's smooth, it's creamy, it's tangy, all these combinations. These are not normal to nature. Think about it. An animal in nature goes up, finds a tree with some bananas on it, grabs a banana, eats it. The banana is the same temperature as it was when the animal got it. It was only the taste of the banana. Animals don't walk around with a little satchel full of chocolate chips and dip their banana in it and then put it in their mouth. That doesn't happen. So they eat what they get, which is usually pretty straightforward. But we've figured out in our brilliance how to make things multisensory. And as a result, we get much more dopamine release when we eat these foods. So for example, take a cup of milk by itself. It might be quite delightful, especially when it's ice cold and you're enjoying it before bedtime. Or let's say that you get some of these pieces of chocolate, very nice crunch, and then they kind of break up in your mouth, very nice. And then peanut butter, very creamy, oh, love it, a little salt added, so nice. But what if you combined all these together? Like this, now the dopamine is going crazy here. It's just an orgasm in your brain about this food. And that's what people experience, this dopaminergic high, this release in their brain. But why? Because they reached for a hyper-palatable food-like substance of addiction that is multisensory. So if you're fighting with a food addiction, if you know you struggle, the first thing is to get multisensory hyper-palatable foods off your plate, out of your fingers, and out of your house, and away from you. That's the first step. Because these foods stimulate overconsumption because the massive amount of dopamine that is released. They override your feelings of fullness, and unfortunately in America today, they're highly accessible, right? Ask somebody where they're going to buy their broccoli, right? And they may have to think through it a little bit. But if they want to get some fries and a slushie, they know the 5 places within a mile's drive of their house. We need to work on this because otherwise we get addicted. And this truly is what occurs to so many of us. This is a functional MRI of the brain showing the pleasure sensors in the brain lighting up in response to sugar as compared to cocaine. You just see how it lights up these pleasure sensors so much. What else could explain these horrible states that many of us, so many of our family members find themselves in, even our youth? Do you know that 3 times tripled, we've seen a tripling of pediatric obesity in the last 10 years? It is absolutely a tragedy that is occurring. And it is addiction that is driving these changes. We see it here, for example. Here are the rates of obesity, another little slide for you. Look at the rates of diabetes going upstream here. Well, what if we looked at rates of death related to benzo overdoses or to heroin overdoses? Isn't it fascinating to see that same curve? So there are many people that are struggling with emptiness, with loneliness, with depression, with anxiety, with maybe a God-sized hole somewhere in their hearts, and they're trying to fill it, stuff it with food that makes them obese and diabetic, or with drugs that destroy their lives. This is true. This is what's happening to our nation, to so many people. That is why we're seeing this radical increase in obesity. Do you know that in 1990, no state had more than 15% of its populace that was obese? And now we're projected at 50% in the next couple of years. Our genetics have not changed, but our lifestyles have radically changed. So the foods I spoke of are not even foods at all. Here's your phrase. They're orally administered, highly addictive substances of abuse. And you want to tell yourself that every day. Why? Because when you walk by the rubber cord on the mouse that's at your, in your house on your computer, you don't look at that and go, ooh, I think I'd like to chew on that rubber cord. It looks delightful. Because your brain has already told you that that's rubber and it has no place in your body. So if you begin to tell yourself when you walk by these food-like substance of addiction that, oh, wow, that's really pretty, that's really colorful, I can see how people would think that's attractive. But you say that's not for me, that's not true food, you begin to rewrite what's going on in here. You begin to change the dialogue that's occurring in the central nervous system that radically influences the choices you make. Now, this is the exact opposite from traditional or pure foods, okay? So pure foods promote moderation. They foster a sense of early satiety, and they often require creativity or awareness to purchase them, prepare them, consume them. Great example, right? Some romaine lettuce. You've never met someone who said, I bought an entire crate of 24 heads of lettuce and I just couldn't stop. I mean, I just sat there all weekend and they're all gone. I can't believe it. You've never met that person. You've never met the person that says, I bought 5 pounds of apples last night. Dude, I ate the whole thing. I feel so bad. I'm like so ashamed. Nobody says that because they don't spike the dopamine in the same way. They don't have that addictive potential. They create moderation. Those are the foods that we quote unquote are intended to consume. That's what should be on your plate every day. So remember, some foods are not foods. They're not meant for you. They're not intended for your consumption. Let's talk a little about hunger as our next thing, right? What is hunger, right? What does it really feel like? Well, I'd argue there are 2 types of hunger that it's important for you to distinguish between to help you be successful, to maintain that lean body mass, to reduce inflammation on your joints. Don't forget, if you're obese, you increase your risk of a joint replacement by 500%. You don't want that. You want to protect your joints. So emotional hunger, this is something that comes on suddenly and urgently in classically hangry feelings, right? Makes you have a specific craving. I need the pizza. Give me the pizza now, right? You tend to eat more than you normally would. You're just, and you feel a sense of guilt afterwards. That's different than with true physical hunger that comes on slowly and gradually. You feel it down in the pit of your stomach, just slowly building up this emptiness that says, I need something more. And when you've satisfied it, you're satisfied. And you don't have that sense of guilt or just shame for what you did. So every day that you're hungry, I want you to ask yourself, is it true hunger? Is it physical hunger? Or is this emotional hunger? I had some emotional hunger the other day. I was having a really tough clinic day. I was backed up. I was really busy. I'd had some patients that were, needed a lot of attention. One of my team was out that day. And I was just like, where's something more calorie dense with more dopamine? And I could tell what I was just stressed. It wasn't really about hunger. I was struggling. So I had to take a moment or two, do some deep breathing, quickly jog in the parking lot just to kind of get things relaxed and get back to business. And I felt much better. But I had to first be aware, was I really hungry or was it just a tough day? So start engaging yourself every day. What are you feeling? Is it true hunger or is it just you're stressed, right? Do you really want dessert or is stressed as dessert spelled backwards, right? I love that little meme that you see there. So remember, you need to start thinking about what motivates you, right? Is it a reward system? Is it chronic stress or are there environmental influences? Are you just not aware? Do you feel ignorant about things? You just don't understand what's healthy for you? Is it willpower that you lack, etc.? These are crucial things to think about because you need to think about what motivates you for your choices that you're making. Because if you, for example, start going, well, hey, Dr. Esser, I don't really just know what to eat. I'd love to eat healthier. I'm just not sure what's the healthiest. I feel confused. Well, then maybe it's time to come in for a consult, chat with me in clinic. Or go to my, Instagram or, Facebook page at Esser Health and start looking at meals and the research that I'm putting up, etc. Start somewhere, learning more. And then also, like I said, recognize, do you eat for stress? Are you choosing certain foods because you're chronically stressed? Well, hey, how's your relationship at home? How is your family situation? Do you feel loved, respected, and appreciated? If not, what can we do about that? How can we begin to address that more? Because if chronic depression is what you're dealing with and lack of sense of purpose and identity, we need to work on that first. It's not about the food yet. It's not about the exercise. It's about those emotions. So we've got to get deeper into here for you and I to understand where we are. Many of us started our behaviors and patterns very early on in life. And unfortunately, these patterns continue throughout our lives. I saw multiple patients today whose body mass index put them well into the severe obesity category. And it was fascinating because many of them were over the age of 60. And I thought, when I asked them, what was the lightest you've been in the last 30 years, the heaviest, et cetera, the majority answered the same thing, that they had been heavy for a long time. They had struggled for years with their weight. And if you've been struggling with your weight for years and your health for years, I guarantee you that your emotions are a big part of your success or your failure. We need to start rediscovering our relationship with food. These two memes catch a few of the things that some of my patients say, right? That our relationship with food is reflective of our relationship with life. You may know that people who are chronically depressed or anxious are more likely to consume food-like substances of addiction. In other words, junk food. And they're also more likely to be obese. And they're also more likely to be hypertensive, diabetic, hypercholesterolemic, et cetera. They get the diseases of consuming those foods. So if you're struggling with depression, if you're struggling with anxiety, and you know that's deep down in there with wounds or vulnerabilities you've dealt with, reach out. Make sure you've got help and assistance, right? Do you have a family member? Do you have a priest, a pastor, a rabbi, or associate? Do you have a counselor? Do you have a psychiatrist? Do you have the resources you need to really be successful? If not, this is your time. I want to remind you, you should be the architect of your life. You should be up at that 30,000-foot view looking down at your life and saying, hey, things are a little out of place here. The roads are not quite lining up here. I can see this vehicle that's moving down is not getting to its destination where it should. And if you notice that, then it's time as the architect of your life to say what needs to change. Don't wait. Don't just think things are magically going to happen, because they're not. But rather, take control. Start thinking about this. What's your motivation to eat? We talked a little about that earlier, right? Because motivations can either be extrinsic or intrinsic. I talked to a patient the other day and I was like, tell me more about what you eat and why. And they said, I struggle so much because my spouse hates healthy food. I love healthy food. One of the greatest predictors of their success was the support of their spouse. They felt like they had to eat what their spouse was eating in order to keep them happy. Well, I said, that's not healthy. Not healthy for you, not healthy for them. So it's time to have a meaningful conversation, right? Because we need to be aware of our own health. So if you ask yourself, how's my health? You go, really good. And then you look in your pharmacy pantry and you notice you're on 10 medicines. Wow, maybe your health isn't as good as you think it is. What do you know about food? The health benefits, the availability, how to prepare it. Do you know how to cut a pineapple? Do you know how to chop up broccoli to steam it? Do you know these basics on how to prepare food that allow you to prepare more healthy food on a regular basis? Are you struggling financially, right? Is time the greatest challenge for you? Start being that architect that looks and says, well, where are the problems? How can we resolve them? How can we move forward? Now, I want you tonight, right? You can write this down quickly if you have paper and pen in front of you. Grab a paper and a pen or put it on your cell phone. Rank the reasons you eat according to what's your strongest motivator to your least, right? Is the motivator, let's go back to that slide, right? Is it you eat well because of health benefits? Is it you don't eat well because of the cost of food? What are your reasons? You've got to write them down in order to start making a plan, in order to start addressing these issues in your health. Let's make a little transition here. I want to talk about one of the powerful predictors of your emotional success, and that is emotional intelligence. If you're not familiar with this topic, I want you to get some books. I want you to research it later tonight, because tonight is the beginning or somewhere along your path. It shouldn't be the end of your conversation with yourself. I want you to go and read on emotional intelligence, because once you learn more about your own self, how you function, where your emotions are, then you can make changes. So let's talk through this a little bit. There are going to be 5 major areas of emotional intelligence. Let's start with the first, and that is self-perception. How do you identify? The computer didn't freeze. I was letting you think. Yeah? How do you identify? Do you identify yourself as a motivated person, as a driven person, as a capable person, as an intelligent person? Or when you close your eyes, do you actually visualize yourself as a broken person, as a failed person, as an unable to be successful in your own health person? Do you feel ashamed? Is that what you feel when you close your eyes and think of yourself? Because many people who struggle with their weight, that's exactly what they feel. They close their eyes and they're transported back to a time when they were on the playground and kids would say, hey, fatty. What's going on? Or when their parents would say to them, golly, I mean, you're just not fitting into those clothes quite right. You put on weight. What are you doing, Janice? Right? So this is crucial for you to think about, how do you think of yourself? Because if you still identify as that little kid on the playground where people made fun of you, or as the person who failed to not eat the donuts for 3 days when you said you would, you're not going to be successful. You've got to start identifying yourself rather as the individual who's motivated, as the person who wants to be successful, as the person who can be successful. Who are you, right, on this journey of life? What do you stand for, right? So it's interesting. I was in medical school. I remember this so well. And I did not pack food this one day. And there was a talk at lunch put on by the pharmaceutical companies, which of course pay for most of the food for med students, kind of hook you into all the drugs, right? And so I'm in there and I had no food to eat. So what was I going to eat? Let's eat what's on the plate. What did they serve? You bet, Chef, pizza. So I had a couple slices of pizza. And the next day, one of my peers in medical school walked up to me and they were like, I can't believe you ate pizza, Stephan. What? I thought you'd never do that. I was like, oh, I felt so ashamed. I felt like, wow, I had totally sold my soul, right? And so for me, I realized, what do I stand for? So while many of you may not preach this message on a daily basis, I do. And I realized I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I wanted to actually stand for what I preached. And so as a result, I made the choice moving forward. Well, hey, if I forgot food one meal, I was just going to skip the meal. Offer it up as a little sacrifice. I'm not going to die skipping the meal. I'll make it, right? And so you've got to think about, what do you stand for? Where are your boundaries, right? That you're going to put down and say, hey, I know I'm going to this party with so-and-so, but right now, my health matters so much because I'm borderline diabetic. I'm on 3 blood pressure meds. And the doctor said they're putting me on full-on more meds if I don't lose this weight, if I don't bring my blood sugars down. Well, then your priorities are different. When you go to that party, it should be like, well, hey, I'm going to bring a salad with me. Or I'm going to wait till I get home. I'm going to party and have a great time, but I'm not going to eat all that junk food, right? Or I'm going to swing by and get a salad on my way there. So it's crucial that you understand what you stand for and who you identify as. Next is self-expression. Can you express your beliefs, your passions, your motivations effectively? Are you an independent learner? Are you comfortable being different than those around you? Because let me state something here. If you think you can be healthy and be just like everybody else in America, you're wrong. That's right. Look at the numbers. Statistically, 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. 1 in 3 has high blood pressure. 1 in 6 has high cholesterol. 1 in 9 has diabetes. That means if you want to be healthy, you've got to be doing something different than everybody else. Or what will happen to you? You will end up with the same diseases everyone else does, unless you have some superhuman genetics, which very few people do. So the standard American diet, or the SAD diet, will make you sad and sick over time if you're not careful. Next, interpersonal. How well do you relate to others? Do you engage in multiple diverse groups and individuals in different ways? In other words, can you have conversations about topics related to health, etc., in a way that is open, in a way that is engaging, in a way that allows you to learn new and different things? That's what we want you to think about. What about decision making? What are your common motivators? Can you delay gratification? Is it emotions or is it reason that drives your actions most? You want to think about these decisions, because if you cannot delay gratification, if you're hung up still on just the constant little dopamine spikes and spurges, it'll be so challenging for you to be successful with your health long term. So practicing a little intermittent fasting, practice a little delayed gratification where you go, oh, I'm not going to have that, nice, whatever it might be, for 2 days. I'm going to hold off. Instead, I'm going to have some simple food. But in 2 days, I'll have a little bit, perhaps. Practicing in this way can help you to be more in charge of your emotions, more in charge of your nutrition. What about stress management? How do you cope? If food is the only stress mechanism or coping strategy you have, that puts you at great risk. So you're going to want to start thinking about other coping strategies. Is it exercise? Is it spirituality? Is it, massage? Is it music? Is it movies? What is it? So crucial for you to think about. You should have a list of about 5 or 6 different stress managing or stress coping strategies in order for you to be healthy long term. Because sometimes the food won't be perfect. Sometimes you won't be able to get all the sleep that you really know you need and want. So you've got to think about, what are your other strategies? Next is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you make your plan. Learn why you eat what you eat. Is it just because that's how you're raised? Or is it because the best science validates the decisions that you make? Next, I want you to work to remove morality from food choices. Instead of saying this is good or this is bad food, instead say this is health promoting food or it's health compromising food. You want to get away from morality when you talk about food, because when you inject, ooh, that's really good, but I shouldn't have it, it creates a whole false sense of desire and feeds the addictive cycle. It also makes kind of a greater desire for it. Because remember, when we were told as kids, you can't have that. You're not supposed to have that. What was our next response? How can I get it? How can I sneak in the back room, take a little bit with me? Mom won't notice. So you want to avoid all morality when it comes to your food conversations in your brain or with your words. Instead, say that's non-health promoting food or that's health promoting food, and start there. Avoid diets. Avoid diets. Why? Because look at the word, die is written right in it. It means you're going to stop it at some point. And instead, embrace a health promoting lifestyle. Now, some of you watching may have done my 4-week nutritional detox. If you ever want to download it, it's at esserhealth.com. But it's a little 4-week program that helps people to lose weight, reduce inflammation, get off medications, etc. But the reality is it's not meant as a diet. It's meant as an intensive program to reset your palate and to get you moving in a positive direction of health. Next, develop relationship with people who share similar health goals to yourself. Do that. You need to make friends who actually promote your health. They don't compromise it constantly. You need a couple people to back you up so that you can use them to keep you responsible, to keep you faithful to caring about your health. You also want to be there for them. Let me tell you, coming from a past where I had 40, 50, 60 family members all eating healthy food, it was wonderful. Big family gatherings were just huge arrays of healthy food. It was never a challenge. The odd person who brought something unhealthy was always like, wait, why, what are you bringing here? Why is that? So the more people you can change to eat healthy with you, the easier it becomes. Your children, your spouse, think about the people in your circles of influence, your best friend, your coworker, etc. But getting them to eat healthier makes it easier for you to do so as well. If you struggle with food addiction and you know yourselves, look in the mirror, be honest with yourself. If you know you've tried so many times to lose weight, to get healthier, but it just never seems to work for you, that means you probably have a food addiction. If you're struggling with that food addiction, right, you really need to limit or eliminate these hyper-palatable foods. It's as simple as that. You know, the alcoholic who says they want to quit drinking, but says, I'm going to keep a little gin in the closet and 3 beers in the fridge. They're not serious. They're not serious about getting off of the alcohol. If you're serious about being healthy and you're struggling with food addiction, you've got to be serious about what's around you. I joke that the least healthy thing in my house are some cashews or peanut butter. You know, it's true. So that if I want unhealthy food, quote unquote, I have to get in my car, drive somewhere and pay extra money. There ain't no way I'm doing that. I'm too lazy, right? Instead, I'm going to eat some nuts, maybe a handful of those with some apples or something of that kind if I'm looking for that little bit of extra dopamine. But you've got to limit your exposure to the hyper-palatable foods so they're not even an option. Clean out your pantry, clean out your fridge, empty that all out. And if you don't even have food in your house, but you're always getting the food on your drive to work or drive back from work, well, then you need to change the direction you drive, right? So if you stop at Mickey D's on the way in and Chick-fil-A on the way home, you need to change your driveway or your drive path so you can drive by a health promoting place where you can get some salads, get some healthy food, get some simpler options. Next, as I mentioned, consider some intermittent periods of fasting. It could be 2 hours, or it could be something as novel as not eating after 8 p.m. at night and not eating before 7 a.m. Imagine that, right? But not eating in those nighttime hours. That's immediately giving you a significant amount of fasting period. Next, channel factor your life. If you're serious about being well and serious about being healthy, you've got to line up the pieces of the puzzle. You've got to make a channel in your life that's wide enough, deep enough, and strong enough that the current is carrying you in a direction of health. That's stuff like I mentioned, of having only healthy food in the house, of increasing the number of healthy friends that you have, of getting that gym membership, or of downloading something you can do exercise-wise at home in a safe way. But beginning to have your life itself directs you in a direction of health. Not that your life's just all over the place. The water's just flowing every which way, or you're like a leaf falling in the breeze and it's just blowing you every direction. You've got to have direction. You've got to know where that direction is meant to lead you and set your life up so it gets you there. In addition, this I cannot overstate. You've got to fill your life with joy, enthusiasm, and service from other sources beyond food. If food is your only source of joy, we need to rethink that. We need to rediscover other places you can find joy and contentment from. And as I mentioned, if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, or suicidality, reach out now. Get help, get support to get through this process. Finally, celebrate. Fill your plate with colors and flavors. Find some foods that are health promoting that you just love, right? Maybe it was that pineapple that grandma introduced you to, and you're always like, man, I always love pineapple. Or maybe it's watermelons, or maybe it's berries. Whatever it is, treat yourself, right? Say, this is my treat that I'm gonna get. These health promoting foods that I have a special attraction affiliation for, and always have them in the house if possible, so that you can, in those moments where you're like, I need a little bit of extra dopamine, I want something, reach for those that are still promoting your health and not compromising it. I want you to remember this simple phrase: you are the most powerful force for health in your life. And it is so true. The majority of diseases we see today, the World Health Organization said that by last year, 2/3 of the global burden of disease in the world would be due to lifestyle, would be due to the personal choices you and I make. And that's part of why we here at Southeast Orthopedics are passionately sharing this with you in such a way, because we want you to be healthy. We want you to be able to live your best, most vital life, to be energetic, to be enthusiastic, to be able to function at your maximum. Whether that be achieving your best out on the tennis court or out on the field, or whether it be merely being able to play with grandchildren, walk upstairs with less pain, etc. But you want to remember that the feelings that you feel inside radically influence the actions you take with your life. So it's time for you and I to start thinking about, what do we feel? Why do we feel it? What do we eat and why do we eat it? And making choices that are synchronous with our personal health goals. So if you want your joints to be less inflamed, to be less painful, to have less swelling in your limbs, to have replacements or healthy joints last longer, that all starts at the tip of your fork and in your fingertips. With that, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share my passion for health with you. And I'm happy to take some questions from our team over here. And so write your questions in there. We'll knock out some of these for you. Thanks for joining tonight. Share the message with friends and family. Sleeping more is a powerful predictor of food addictions. So absolutely, sleep helps reset some of the central nervous system addictive pathways and is crucial. So shooting for 6 to 10 hours per night, waking up rested, that's what we want. Florida's obesity rate is very similar to much of the South. And so the South has some of the highest rates of obesity. If you just click on maps of obesity on Google, it'll come right up. You can see the exact number. As far as women on average tend to hold their weight better than men do. Theoretically, we believe that's related to the need for women to hold on to their calories better so that they are more fertile and able to carry a child. And so that's the theoretical belief that we have. In addition, hormonal balances in a woman's body influence metabolism. So especially postmenopausal women will tend to have slower metabolisms and hold on to their calories better. So the simplest place to start is to think about calorie density. This is a simple model that shows us that vegetables are 100 calories per pound. Let's put that here. On the other flip side, all the way over here are oils. So vegetables are 100 calories per pound. Then we get fruits are 300 on average per pound. Then we get beans, 600, rice, 700. Then we get into meat and dairy at 1,000. Then we get in processed foods. Then we get into nuts and seeds. Then we get into oil at 4,000 calories per pound. So just do the math there, for example. You can eat 1 tablespoon of olive oil equals 5 large tomatoes. Which is going to make you feel more full? 5 big tomatoes that fill all this, or a little tiny thimbleful of olive oil? Well, we know the answer. It is the volume of the food we eat that stretches our stomach receptors and causes us to feel satiety. So foods that are low in total calorie density but high in volume, which are all the vegetables and fruits, are most likely to get you satiety. So by itself, coffee and tea in small quantities does have some possible health benefits, but in large quantities used to make up for lack of sleep, it is a no-no, should not be done, because really what you need is sleep, not more caffeine. In addition, for the majority of people, they don't drink their coffee or tea simple. They add in all kinds of delightful things like creamers and flavored things and lots of sugar. So it turns into a calorie bomb that spikes dopamine. A great one to start is The Pleasure Trap by Douglas Lyle, PhD. So The Pleasure Trap, you can look it up. It's a great book with a lot of great psychological stuff and great resources. Depends on what our goals are. And so ketogenic diets will help people short-term lose weight, just like a aggressive plant-based program can. But long-term studies on ketogenic diets show increased risks of heart attacks, strokes, and other risks. So for short-term use, might be reasonable. But ideally, we want to get more plants in there with all the fiber, the micronutrients, and water. That's the most science supports an approach of that kind. You can just go to esserhealth.com and download it there. Again, it depends on what your goals are, right? So if you want to have the healthiest body possible, consuming artificially synthesized, products like various forms of quote sugar-free substances, it can be less than ideal. If you want to go for simple plant-based things like a little stevia added or the like, it may be less concerning to have. But ideally, we want to get our sugars where they are in nature, which is from those fruits and the like. So a small quantity of fat in our diet can be valuable for our overall health. But once we get past 30% of total calories from fat, we lose out on a lot of the benefit. So there's no need to add fat to greens just to absorb them. They will be absorbed just fine by the body. And of course, the body has fats that you consumed in other meals. So you don't have to sort of look at the meal and go, oh, wow, is there fat here to absorb the greens? Will I not get what I need? We used to think something similar to that when it came to beans and rice. We said, well, you're not going to absorb the different proteins unless you have beans and rice together. That has turned out to be a myth. You can eat all those things separate, and your body in its brilliance will do just fine. So initially, with regards to hypothyroidism, the first thing is we want to bring down excessive weight if you are carrying that excess weight. And the simplest way to do that is to eat calorie-poor foods, which of course fall into the vegetables, fruits, and the simple foods we spoke of. As a result, the weight comes down, and now the pressure on the thyroid gland decreases. So low thyroid also drives weight gain, but weight gain also drives thyroid dysfunction. They feed off of each other. So even people with hypothyroidism who are obese find excellent weight loss eating a micronutrient-dense plant-based program. So the studies would suggest that people who are severely hypothyroid and eat large quantities of cruciferous vegetables may slow their thyroid a little bit. But for the majority of the people, there are no foods that are absolute no-nos when it comes to thyroid dysfunction. We may just want to limit in exposure to things like the brassica vegetables, which of course would be things like kale, collard greens, and the like. The most important things with osteoporosis is first, well, what's the cause? Is it lack of physical activity? Is genetic inheritance? Is it low vitamin D levels? There are a lot of different causes of low bone density or osteoporosis. So I encourage people to have a consultation. I do those as well as some of my colleagues here at Southeast to talk about kind of osteoporosis and ways to address it, prevent it, or reverse it if possible. It depends on what your goals are. You see, exercise, we can do another talk on that another night, but comes in several different types, whether it be cardiovascular, resistance training, or flexibility and balance. And so you want to gear your exercise toward what your needs are based on your body. That's where you need to get to know yourself. So if you're more of a mesomorphic, strong build with lots of muscle, then you want to focus on flexibility. If you're very slender, you may want to focus on strength building. But at home, there's a host of different things you can do, and so many videos on YouTube. If you want to do some fun videos from a seated position or a standing position, I did about 60 videos in the past when I worked with Yale, and you can look at those if you just Google search abeforfitness.com. ABEFOR Fitness. If you look that up, you'll find it on one of the Yale websites, and you can watch the videos there for free. There are a lot of different sparkling waters that actually mirror some of the flavors out there these days, whether it be some of the AHA flavors or other different companies that are out there, the Polar Springs and the like. So I think it's worth looking at which of these satisfy your palate so that you can get away from the soft drinks, because we know that excessive consumption of these increases the risk of osteoporosis, as well as the consumption of things like diet sodas increase your risk of Alzheimer's disease and depression. So we really want to get those out of our diets as much as possible. So great question about intermittent fasting. And, from my perspective, with regards to where the science is today, the best intermittent fasting ratio, first of all, it depends on what your goals are. That's number one. And number two, I don't believe that intermittent fasting by itself should be its own goal. I think that it should be a part of an entire program. So the person, for example, who does intermittent fasting but eats junk food, they're really not helping their health at all. They're just tricking themselves and pretending that they're doing something healthy. So I actually, advocate for a very normal diurnal pattern. I recommend and advocate for people not to eat after about 8 p.m. at night, except for on special occasions or rare occasions, and then not to eat again before 7 a.m. And right there, you just got a big segment of time in which your body has a chance to digest, recuperate, and recover. But if you think about it, there's no other creature on earth that forcibly makes itself fast. It eats when it's hungry. But what those animals do is they eat what they're intended for. So for example, in the wild, tigers only eat on average once a week, because on average, they're not that good of killers, right? Because other animals are fast and getting away. And when they do catch something, they eat about 30 to 50% of their body weight in protein and fat. So they satisfy the needs of their body, and they only eat every week. So that's fine for them, but we're more primates, which are intended to eat on a more regular basis. But monkeys in the wild don't sit around the grass and watch the sun move through the sky and then go, okay, time to eat. Let's have some grass. Let's have some bananas. They eat when they're hungry. When they're full, they stop. And that's what we should be doing. But we need to eat food that we're intended for. And as a result, satiety will occur on its own. We don't have to forcibly do an artificial fasting period. Meal prepping is absolutely essential for individuals, especially if you live on your own or if you're working very long hours, because in order to be prepared, you need to have healthy food. Now, my favorite way of meal prepping, of course, is to just make enough the night before dinner that I have for the next day at lunch. But if you are working so hard that you're leaving super early in the morning, you're not back till 7 or 8 at night, and then you're leaving early the next morning again, you may need to meal prep once or twice a week so you have enough meals laid aside and ready for you. So you need to know what your personal life looks like, what you need to do to be successful. For those of you out there who are retirees, of course, there's no reason for you to meal prep. You need to make your food fresh the same day and consume it. But again, identify what works best for you and helps you be successful with your food.